Peace. What's good, family? It's your brother Cool. So, I just spent the last hour or so observing that so-called trial dealing with Mr. Kavanaugh, Donald Trump's selected individual who he wants to take office as the Supreme Justice, and now he has claims made against him on the basis of sexual transgressions against women that took place about 36 years ago. So, and honestly, that whole scenario has absolutely nothing to do with the agenda of indigenous peoples. It's just a distraction. And there's millions of dollars that go into these distractions every year to keep us off the great Masonic secret. And the great Masonic secret is that we are the ancient or the oldest people on this planet. Us right here, the so-called Black African American, right here in the Americas. We are the oldest people on this planet. Says genetics. They found the oldest remnants of the Y chromosome. They found the oldest man, melanated man, more in South Carolina. That says a lot about us and our position here on this land. All right, we're not just visitors that was brought over here from Africa. We have a right and an interest to this land by blood. And as long as we don't acknowledge the fact, we will continue to deny ourselves our own inheritance. There's no one denying us our inheritance except for ourselves. And it's due to the fact that we have to correct the record on a federal level. We have to correct the record on a federal level. All right? The Supreme Court is a federal level. The Social Security Administration is a federal level. The Department of State is federal. You understand what I'm saying? So, all these things are federal. And federal is dealing with treaties. And if you know who you are, then you already know you got a treaty on deck that applies to you and protects you and your rights. And so it states in the Constitution in Article 6, dealing with the Supremacy Clause. All treaties shall be the supreme law of this land. So if you don't have a treaty, you don't have no supreme law that has to be followed or respected on this land. Especially if you're not claiming that this is your land, when this is your land. This is your land. Modernly called North, South, Central America, anciently known as Maghreb al-Aqsa, Morocco, the extreme west, sunset. So it's not hard to, it's not a mystery no more as to who we are. All right, and knowing who we are as the heirs here, because we was here before everybody. We were here before everybody, and we will be here when everybody's gone. All right, so we are the heirs. So it makes sense that our status is corrected on all fronts, privately as well as publicly. And when I say publicly, I'm meaning federal, meaning, you know what I'm saying, you should have a state ID first, and your free national title with your headdress on, you know what I'm saying? And then from there, go update the Social Security information to also reflect your status as an Aboriginal. And then from there, go get your passport. And make sure you have a letter that substantiates the fact as to why you need to have a photo with your headdress on there. Because slaves are not allowed to wear crowns in their photos, just so y'all know that. Slaves are not allowed to wear crowns. That's why they say, if you've ever been in a courtroom, they say, please take any caps or hats or scullies off of your head unless they're for religious purposes. So, of course, you could imagine anytime I have been in court, I've never, ever taken off my headdress. Never. Because it's for religious purposes. Because I know who I am. Okay? And I know the ancient religion of my ancestors, which I choose voluntarily to live out today, to continue our identity as a people. It's up to us as the heirs to continue on the identity that our ancestors left. Because our ancestors were not Negro, black, and colored. So due to the fact our ancestors were Negro, black, and colored, there's no inheritance for Negro, black, and colored people anywhere. No ancestors on any from any nation left any will, aka any treaty in place for Negro, black, and colored people. Every treaty speaks to a nation, and every nation has a geographical location on this planet. Every nation. And this is why it's hard for people to comprehend the fact that this landmass known as North South Central America is really Morocco. Don't believe what I'm saying? You gotta study congressional records. You gotta do history on archaeology. You gotta do history on the geography to comprehend. You gotta do the knowledge on the tectonic plates to know exactly where certain land masses were before the great cataclysms that took place that separated everything. Shit wasn't always separate. All right? So that alone just kills all of that whole, like I said, out into Africa experience. I mean, coming in from Africa. We weren't brought in from Africa, y'all. We was already here chilling in the Maghreb. This has always been the Maghreb. Whatever colonial or colonized name that chooses to be used today, we don't have to assimilate, or we don't have to feel compelled to go along with that. As a prime example, I've been doing some heavy research on this landmass, modernly slash corporately called Washington, specifically Seattle, Washington. This ancient place, before it was known as Seattle, is known as Wul Shut Seed, which means little crossing place. And the reason why it was called Little Crossing Place is because there was tons of rivers and different navigational points to where people could intercross and meet up with each other. So that's what Seattle is known for. Seattle is not Seattle at all. Seattle is Wul Shut Seed. So you understand? Now that I know that, that's locked in my brain. Boop, boop. So this indigenous jurisdiction is Wul Shut Seed. See what I'm saying? So I don't gotta assimilate. I'm going back to the ancient thoughts and ways of my ancestors. So whatever they went by anciently, that's what I choose to go by today. Because no matter what happens, time will, things will change and shit like that. But the truth will always be the same. The truth won't change. And the truth is we were always here. In all types of different appearances. Some of us wrapped our head. Some of us did things with our hair. Some of us wore headdresses. Some of us had different type of crowns, feathers, etc., etc. Body painting, facial painting, piercings, tattoos, whatever you want to imagine. We had all these type of things being utilized as indigenous peoples. All right, so there's nothing new in terms of how we looking, especially when we're being in our proper person. This is how we've always been. This is how it was before 1492, minus all the modern day, all the modern day stuff. This land was here, these trees were here, and us as people have always been here. And that's the important factor. And so it plays a major role. This is why nationality and trust is so key. Because you need to have your national character. You need to know who you are, what country you're originally from. You need to know. And then you need to know the ancient name of your country. Because if you're the heir, then you should have knowledge of the estate, anciently and modernly. No group of colonizers can go back as far as we can, as far as the knowledge on the history of these places go, because these places are directly connected to us as peoples, because we are the ones that were here cultivating and bringing these places to life. The colonizers just came and filled in the empty spots. Take highways, for example. All these highways they got running all over these states. Do you know that those highways were original trading routes? All of them were original trading routes. They were dirt. Some were already paved. So you know what I'm saying? We was already doing all these type of things. It wasn't until they came and then they cemented all of the highways, all the dirt roads, all the trade routes, and made them into commercial highways, because they were commercial trading routes. You see what I'm saying? Only difference now is instead of carts and carriages, everyone's in conveyances and vessels and cars. You know what I mean? It's the same concept though. Nothing has changed, only except for the technology and the so-called colonial names that are attached to some of these ancient places. So we need to maintain the ancient names of these places and pass the knowledge down. So that way that becomes normal conversation for us, rather than we shouldn't even be referring to these places in these so-called corporate state names anymore. We should buckle down in the state territory where we're at and do the knowledge and the research on that area. Find the original name and then start referring to that name, to that territory, to yourself mentally as well as publicly in your documentation. I'm not saying go crazy and then try to put that in as mail to receive there. No, do what you normally do. Put the zip code in brackets, in care of, put the corporate mailing location. But then you can also put non-domestic, non-assumption underneath, and then you put the aboriginal name of the place. Okay? So these things are not hard to do, but these are changes that have to take place in order for certain things to be implemented, like nationality and birthrights. You got to be in your proper person. You got to be in the name of your ancestors. That's first of all. You can't be seeking or asking for no remedies through the Constitution or your treaty if you're not coming in the name of the ancestors that wrote that treaty. That means El Bede Al Ali. But specifically when I'm talking about North America, we're dealing with Els and Bays all day, every day. All day, every day. The law writer and the law enforcer, the mother and the father. Mother and the father. El Bay. El Bay. That's what we're dealing with all day, every day. All right? So just being yourself. And you can be yourself everywhere. Oh, but what about work? Religious purposes. Everything you do is for religious purposes. This is why the Constitution is looked at as such a great document, due to the fact that it protects everyone's religious rights. You have a right to not be discriminated based on your religion. And your religion is based on your trust. What trust are you attached to? And when I say trust, that means what community? What community are you attached to? Do you even have a community? Was there a community you were attached to at some point? Are you making an effort to reconnect yourself to that community, to reattach yourself to that community, mentally as well as physically? That's what it means. Are you doing that? If you're not doing that, then you can't talk about enforcing no birthrights or constitution, nothing. Because you got to come in the name of your ancestors, because trust was put in those ancient names. Trust was put in the name of El. Trust was put in the name of Bay. Trust was put in the name of Al. Trust was put in the name of Day. And trust was put in the name of Ali. So when we take these names upon ourselves, spiritually and physically, we're taking a trust. We're accepting the trust. We're accepting a trust that was left behind by our ancestors, and that trust is the will. Now some will say, what's the will? The will is the treaty of peace and friendship between Morocco and the United States of America. Because in all actuality, this is the United States of Morocco. Let's just keep it funky. This is the United States of Morocco. America is derived from Morocco. It's a transliteration. Al-Marak, Al-Merik, Amerik. A lot of people don't know. That's the ancient name for America. Amerik, Morocco, Amerik. I know in Creole, in Haitian, we say Amerik, Amerik. That's America, Amerik. Okay? So Morocco. This is the United States of Morocco. Get comfortable with your land. Get comfortable with yourself. And get comfortable in your contracts. Learn how to contract. Learn how to contract. Learn how to contract. And then start implementing your knowledge on how to contract. And see if your life don't start getting better. See if your experience on this plane don't start getting better. Because your contracts are dictating your experiences on this plane. Which means that we have a lot of loose ends to tie up. As far as contracts goes. And the main devastating things in these contracts is that they're making us non-descendable. Which is why we need to correct the record in these contracts. It's crucial, y'all. It's crucial. This is why you can't look at these things in fear. You need to run forward towards it in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Understand the position of these agents and agencies and what their roles are. And understand that they got a job to do. Whether they want to do it or not, they got a job to do. Now, what makes it easy is if you're not reflected. I mean, it's easy when you're reflected as being property in their system. It makes it easy to renege and not have to be obligated to those contracts because there's no obligation to blacks and African Americans. There are obligations to Moors, though. There are obligations to indigenous peoples. So, with that being said, family, I try to share with y'all what I know and pretty much breaking down the system and the setup and what we need to do and what we can't be afraid to do any longer because it's holding us back. I know there's Moors who are nationalized and just stood on that for several years, never doing anything else other than that. And I get it. The prophet said, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality. Well, hell, we're not dead yet. We're still here functioning. So why not have everything be in alignment? So that way, when we leave this earth plane, we're in full alignment with the higher self and the lower self, the private and the public. Correct it all. Strip the agents and agencies of the United States Corporation butt naked. Leave them weaponless. So now when they come in my presence, they're weaponless. There's nothing for them to utilize against me. I've corrected the record, which is something you also need to do. Correct the record and then be yourself and live as yourself. That don't mean you need to look like me or do as I do. You do what makes you feel good. This is what makes me feel good. This is me. You do what makes you feel good. You look how you want to look. You be how you want to be. But you need to know that you are indigenous. You need to know that you are a Moor. And there ain't no other way around it. So you can sugarfoot and play all these little games and try to be everything else except for yourself. But you'll never see Moors who go around and say that we're not this, we're not that, we're not this. Never see Moors say, oh no, we're not Hebrew Israelites. You know what I'm saying? Or we're not the Wapians, or we're not Ethiopians, or we're not the Egyptians, or we're not the you know what I'm saying? All these ancient tribes. We as Moors encompass all of those things. So we're never in a position where we say, we're not this. We don't believe in the separation. That's how we got defeated in the first place. We're all one. Now you'll see other groups and cliques say, oh, I'm this, but I'm not that. I'm this, and I'm not that. What other mentality or group of people that you know truly accept all schools of thought without judgment, without trying to change them, accept them as they are, and then receive the wonderful knowledge that they have to offer? Because every body, just like every school of thought, has a perspective. So I, as a Moor, never try to force how I feel about myself on other people. Although I know you're a Moor, I don't need you to say that. But I know if you go into a court of law, what the real deal is going to be. You know what I'm saying? This is even something the seer has said back in the day. Like, and I agree with it 100%. That's what I'm saying it right now. Like, in a court of law, I know what it is. They know what it is. They know what time it is. You as a Moor. That's what time that is. And Moors are all of that. Hebrew Israelites, Nuwapians, and all of that. But for all those schools of thoughts that will claim to not be Moors, you're killing your claim. You're killing your life force. And you're also killing the attachment to your inheritance, which was left for you by your Moorish ancestors. Ain't no way around it, y'all. Ain't no way around it. So it's either we come to accept these terms, accept the truth, and move forward, or we're going to keep playing around and run around in the hamster wheel. So yes, go and correct the record, man. Update your information, man. Make sure it's reflecting the truth that you are indigenous, man. You're the owner of the estate, man. There's no lie in that. The lie is the reclassification.